Part 17. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 161. Your Majesty. Yan bowed slightly, his expression neither humble nor arrogant. I came here with my father's will to convey my intention to be together with the great Zhou forever, and I am willing to offer my sister Princess Jingchen to the Emperor. I hope the Emperor can treat her well, and from now on, the two countries will form a marriage alliance, live in peace, and let the people of the two countries stay away from war and enjoy peace and prosperity forever. After the voice fell, the hall was slightly quiet. Everyone looked at the woman standing beside him. The girl covered her face with an ice blue veil, revealing a beautiful outline. Her black hair fell softly on her shoulders. A jade hairpin inlaid with rubies was inserted diagonally on her head. She had a slender figure and wore a fiery red palace satin-waisted long skirt that dragged to the ground. The glittering gems on the end of the skirt showed her nobleness and dazzle, which made people envious. There was a moment of silence in the hall. Then the emperor smiled faintly and said, "Prince Ye has come from afar, and I was unable to go out of the palace to greet him. I hope you will forgive me for my impoliteness. Your Majesty is too polite." "I am very terrified." Ye Yan smiled. "Prince Ning of the Great Zhou is a prince who knows how to entertain guests. I am very satisfied with the etiquette of the Great Zhou." "Very satisfied." The ministers in the palace couldn't help but complain in their hearts. When the two countries were at war, I wonder if they were satisfied with the iron cavalry of the Great Zhou. Rong Chuiyun looked at the woman beside him and smiled faintly. "The princess is so beautiful, she really lives up to her name. If the two countries can really make peace forever, I will naturally feel gratified. Prince Ye, please take a seat." Rong Yu and Nan 11 sat in the first seat on the left under the throne. Below them were several old princes of the clan, such as Prince Yen and Prince Qin, and the old ministers in the court. Below them were young princes, including Prince Ning, Prince Qi, Prince Duan, and Prince Yun. The first seat on the right and the seats below it were all empty, and they were specially prepared for the prince, princess, and envoys of Shu. Ye Yan nodded, walked to the first seat on the right and sat down, while his sister Ye Qingchen knelt behind him, saying nothing, looking gentle and quiet. But the fiery red dress exuded a dazzling luster, and even if she was low-key and silent, she was particularly eye-catching in the hall. After kneeling quietly, Ye Qingchen raised her eyes inadvertently, and her sight met Nan 11 opposite her. She raised her eyebrows slightly and said casually, "I didn't know that men and women in the Great Zhou dynasty were equally respected before. Today I have seen such a spectacle. Women can show up at men's banquets openly. I really envy them." The woman was not only beautiful, but her voice was also pleasant from the bottom of her heart, gentle and soft, so charming that everyone felt a sense of surging for a while. However, after a brief moment of distraction, they did not ignore what the princess said. Everyone had different reactions, but no one dared to speak easily. "What a joke! Who dares to question the system of male superiority and female inferiority in the Great Zhou?" The reason why the queen sat next to the emperor was because the queen had the noble status and responsibility of being the mother of the country. When entertaining the dignitaries and envoys from foreign countries who came from afar, the queen should come out. The daughter of the Nan family sat next to the regent because she had just married the regent. Although the status of the regent princess was not as high as that of the queen, with the current power of the regent, even the queen would not dare to speak loudly in front of the regent princess, and she probably would not even dare to put on the queen's airs. Of course, they also knew that no matter how noble the regent princess was, Nan 11 should not have come to such an occasion to entertain foreign guests today, but the regent insisted on bringing the newlywed princess with him, so what else could others say? At this time, the beautiful princess didn't know whether she was really envious or pretending to be stupid, but there was no doubt that anyone who dared to speak without authorization at this time would be courting death. If she spoke well, she would offend the emperor, and if she spoke badly, she would offend the regent. So keeping silent was the best policy. However, there have been many people who are not afraid of death since ancient times. Princess, you don't know that Miss Nan is the newly married princess of the regent of the Great Zhou. Prince Yun had a gentle smile on his lips. In addition, Miss Nan is also the daughter of Juxiao Pavilion, so she is qualified to be here today. As soon as these words came out, the emperor and the queen looked gloomy. The daughter of Juxiao Pavilion? Rong Chuiyun still didn't understand how Nan 11 became the daughter of Juxiao Pavilion. Relying on this identity, she even dared to ignore the rule of entering the palace to offer tea to the queen mother on the second day of the wedding. And the queen was naturally in a bad mood. She was a queen, in charge of the palace, but she had to look at the face of a regent princess. Thinking of the loss she had suffered at the hands of Nan 11 before, she wanted to peel off a layer of skin from her immediately. The daughter of Juxiao Pavilion, Yeching Cheng raised her eyebrows slightly, and her voice was a little more playful. That's really a coincidence. Coincidence? What does this mean? Everyone looked at her in confusion. Yeching Cheng's eyes fell on Rong Yu's face, and a meaningful look appeared in her eyes. However, Rong Yu just sat in silence, and did not speak from beginning to end, obviously not intending to pay attention to her. Nan 11 also seemed like an outsider who had nothing to do with her. She did not respond to Yeching Cheng's words that were obviously meaningful, and had no intention of giving her face at all. The slender palace maids shuttled in the palace, presenting fine wine and delicacies in an orderly manner. Yan picked up the wine cup and raised it to Rong Chuiyun, saying, "I offer a toast to His Majesty the Emperor. I wish that the great Zhou and Shu kingdoms will have eternal peace and will never fight again." Nan 11 complained inwardly. As expected, no matter if a ruler has real ability or not, he must first learn to lie with his eyes open. Before the Prince of Shu came to the Great Zhou, the border of Shu quietly increased its troops by 50,000. When the war was going on, he said, "I hope the two countries will be in peace forever and will not fight again." Are you kidding me? Music sounded in the hall, and a group of young and slender dancers in red came up to the hall. After paying respects to the emperor and empress, they danced gracefully in the hall. Bending waists and waving sleeves, they were all charming. Rong Chuiyun raised the wine cup in front of him and drank with Yan. When the cup was empty, the palace servant immediately bent down to pour it. Yan raised the cup and gestured to Rong Yu, "This cup is for the heroic and extraordinary regent of the Great Zhou." Rong Yu picked up the cup and gestured silently in the air. Yan raised his head and drank it all. The queen glanced at the ministers, then looked in the direction of Yeching Cheng, and smiled gently and dignifiedly, "Your Highness Princess is beautiful and noble. Since the prince proposed the marriage between the two countries, I am a little curious. I wonder which prince of the Great Zhou your Highness has taken a fancy to." Yeching Cheng seemed a little puzzled when she heard her ask, "What does the queen mean by this? I can freely choose my husband for the marriage." The queen obviously didn't expect her to be so direct. She paused for a moment and then smiled, "It depends on which prince is suitable. You can't let the princess be wronged as a concubine, right?" Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 162. Become a concubine. Yeching Cheng smiled lightly, even though her face was covered by a veil, she could not hide the charm flowing from her eyebrows and eyes. Didn't the queen listen to what the emperor said just now? My father offered this princess to the emperor of your country, but the queen asked me to choose one from the princes. Are you worried that this princess will enter the palace and compete for your favor? After the voice fell, the air in the hall suddenly dropped in temperature. The queen's face turned pale. The ministers turned their heads in disbelief and looked at this beautiful but bold princess of Shu. She came to the great Zhou for marriage, but openly challenged their queen in front of the ministers of the great Zhou. She was so bold. Ninth sister, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince of Shu Kingdom obviously did not expect his sister to be so bold. He frowned and coldly scolded, "Don't be rude." Ye Qingqing's eyes curled up slightly, and she lowered her eyes lazily and picked up the wine cup. Her tender and white left hand slightly lifted the veil, and the fragrant and sweet palace jade liquid went down her throat. I don't know if it was the smell of wine or the evil spirit. When the woman raised her eyes again, her eyes, which were more beautiful than peach blossoms, seemed to be drunk and hazy, and her voice also had a bit more bewitching charm. Qingqing's words are too presumptuous, please be generous, Her Majesty, and don't take it to heart with me. Nan 11 was slightly surprised, thinking that this princess was really a strange woman, but the queen seemed to have met an opponent at the moment, which was really rare. The queen's mood did not improve because of her words. Looking at this charming woman, she felt a strong fear and vigilance in her heart. Such a beauty must not be allowed into the harem, otherwise it will surely make the harem chaotic. Your Majesty, the queen turned her head and looked at His Majesty the Emperor, aren't Prince Ning and Prince Yun married yet? Why not marry the princess to one of the two princes, which can also be regarded as a perfect marriage? Rong Chuiyun looked at Ye Qingqing's stunning face, which could not be concealed even through the veil, and smiled faintly. I wonder what the princess thinks. Ye Yan, the Prince of Shu, said, my father's original words were to offer Princess Qingcheng of Shu to His Majesty as a concubine. But since she has come to the Great Zhou, Qingcheng will be a person of the Great Zhou from now on, and the marriage will naturally be decided by His Majesty the Emperor. Ye Qingcheng lowered his eyebrows and sipped a sip of fine wine, without commenting on this. Everyone knew in their hearts that although the Prince of Shu said that Princess Qingcheng would be a person of the Great Zhou from now on, and the marriage would be decided by His Majesty the Emperor, this sentence was obviously secondary. The most important thing is the previous sentence. The original words of the Shu Emperor were, I offer Princess Qingcheng to His Majesty the Emperor of the Great Zhou as a concubine. The queen's mood suddenly sank. Although she had to maintain the demeanor and grace of the mother of the Great Zhou in front of the guests and the important officials of the Great Zhou, she really couldn't accept such a charming woman entering the harem. Beauty is a disaster. Didn't you see that the emperor's eyes were shining when he saw Princess Qingcheng? She dared to guarantee that once Princess Qingcheng really entered the harem, with her charming and seductive skills, she would definitely be able to make the emperor fall in love with her. By then, the queen and the 4 concubines would probably be trampled under her feet. What do you think, Queen? The emperor turned his head and said in a light tone, what kind of status should be given to Princess Qingcheng? Is this a promise? The queen's eyes dimmed, and a dignified smile rose at the corner of her lips. The harem is full of 1 queen and 4 concubines. I feel that I can't let the princess be wronged. Although the regent uncle has just married, there is only 1 princess in the palace for the time being, and the relationship in the backyard is simple. I believe that your highness and the princess should be able to live in peace. I wonder if the little ant can tolerate another person in the uncle's backyard. The mother of a country arranged a marriage in public. The people in the palace had different expressions. They subconsciously turned their heads to look at the regent princess, and then felt that such a move was a bit rude. They quickly looked away and lowered their eyes to drink. The women in the deep palace are really not easy to deal with. In front of everyone, the queen's words were soft and needle-hidden. On the surface, she was thinking about the Princess of Shu and didn't want to wrong her, but in fact, she pointed the princess to the regent in public, and even directly hinted that the regent princess should be magnanimous and accept her husband's 3 wives and 4 concubines. And the king is the king, and the minister is the minister. Although the regent is powerful and the emperor's elder, there must be a boundary between the monarch and his subjects. The queen wants to remind Nan 11 of this fact in public, and warn her not to take advantage of the power of the regent to disrespect the monarch and the queen. The blatant warning, but there is no strong command or threat in the words, but a gentle tone, which makes people laugh and swallow this loss, and not to quarrel with her. But it is true. Who would be stupid enough to quarrel with the mother of a country in front of all the ministers in the court? But the regent looked a little cold, and he might not give the queen this face. What the queen said makes sense. Before wrong you could get angry. Nan 11 spoke casually, with a smile on her lips, calm and magnanimous. The princess of Shu has come from afar, so she must be the principal wife, not a concubine. My prince has married me, and there is only one principal wife. No matter how generous I am, I can't let the prince take the princess as a concubine, right? So it's a bit inappropriate to call her a sister. The queen's face froze slightly, and then she smiled faintly. I mean, she can be a co-wife. The queen is joking. Nan 11's tone was neither fast nor slow, and there was no hint of fireworks, but there was an inexplicable pressure. In the laws of the Zhou dynasty, there is no equal wife in the stipulations about the status of husband and wife. It is said that this kind of title does not exist. The Prime Minister set a precedent a few days ago, but his behavior has become the laughing stock of the whole city. The princess's marriage is a major event between the two countries, and the queen mother should not want to be the regent. The king and princess also became the laughing stock of the world because of such ridiculous things. Rong Yu's lips curled up slightly, and he picked up the wine cup in front of him in a good mood and took a sip. His behavior was dignified and elegant, as pleasing to the eye as flowing clouds and flowing water. Others, however, were not in such a wonderful mood. In addition to the Empress, Prime Minister Nan, who was sitting under the regent, became distraught at the scene. When he heard Nan 11's words, Nan Xingzi, who was originally unhappy, coldly rebuked him. What nonsense are you talking about? As a father, I want to. What are you doing? It's your daughter's turn to comment. The atmosphere in the hall suddenly became tense. The princess must have said something right. Rong Yu turned his head, his cold and picturesque brows filled with a chill due to his words. In the laws of the Zhou dynasty, there is indeed no such thing as equal wives when it comes to the status of husband and wife. Does Nan Xiang think 11er is right? Nan Xingzi frowned and had to lower his head to explain. What I mean is that she should not expose her father's shortcomings in front of the prince and princess. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 163. Then there must be a shortcoming that can be exposed. Rong Yu said in a stern tone. Nan Xiangruo can walk and sit upright, so why should he be afraid of others exposing his shortcomings? Besides, 11er was just explaining that there is no such thing as equal wives in the laws of the Zhou dynasty. According to regulations, Prime Minister Nan happened to have set such a precedent, so she just said it casually, so Prime Minister Nan doesn't need to be too sensitive. Nan Xingzi's face was as gloomy as ink. Thinking of the financial difficulties in Nan Xiang's mansion these past 2 days, and of Nan 11's deeds as a fatherless person, he wished he could sever the father-daughter relationship with her on the spot, and let the world take a good look at the white-eyed wolf daughter he had raised in the Prime Minister's mansion. However, with the regent here, Nan Xingzi could only endure the anger for his life. Everyone, please be patient and don't hurt your peace because of me. Ye Cheng spoke softly, with a smile in his voice. Marriage cannot be forced, and marriage between two countries is not a piece of cake, so you might as well listen to my thoughts. The Prince of Shu frowned and warned coldly, 9 sisters. Ye Cheng ignored him and looked at Nan 11, is the Princess Regent unwilling to accept me, or is she unwilling to accept the Princess Regent taking a concubine? Nan 11 smiled gently. Princess, do you want to hear a gentle explanation or a rough answer? Ye Cheng seemed to find it interesting, and asked playfully, How should I say gentleness? How should I say roughness? It's true, Nan 11's voice was gentle and polite, but firm. My prince and I love each other deeply. He has not let me down, and I will not let him down. We have a harmonious relationship and will grow old together. There is no room for anything else between us, husband and wife. Anyone insert. When the ministers heard this, their expressions were subtle and awkward. They secretly complained that the princess regent was too shameless and did not feel ashamed to talk about love in public. However, seeing the regent quietly curling up his lips and looking happy, everyone only dared to curse in their hearts and suppress their shame on their faces. Ye Cheng asked, "Is this a gentle term?" "Indeed." Ye Cheng smiled and said, "What about the rougher one? I am a narrow-minded, selfish, and extremely possessive woman. My mind is as big as the tip of a needle. I am unwilling to share a husband with another woman. If anyone dares to covet my husband, I will definitely let him do it within my ability." She would rather die. Nan 11 smiled lightly. "If I can't do it myself, I will let my prince take action. In short, anyone who has evil intentions and tries to be my sister, I will let her know. It won't end well for my sister." Everyone suddenly shuddered and thought of the daughter born in the brothel of Prime Minister Nan. It was said that the girl Nanyu was already receiving guests in the brothel and was not allowed any freedom. Prime Minister Nan secretly sent someone to ask for someone from the brothel, madam. But Nanyu was sent in because she offended the regent and Nan 11, and the madam didn't dare to give him this face. Although Nanyu was quite pretty, she was already not perfect before entering the brothel. Not only did she lose her virginity, but she was even pregnant with Gu Qingshu's child. Almost no one in the entire imperial city knew about this. Done. Such a woman is naturally worthless in a brothel. Even because she is holding down a regent, the girls in the brothel know that she will never be able to stand up again in this life, and they bully her hard. The guests who go to have fun know that she was Gu Qingshu's people also look down upon her from the bottom of their hearts. In short, Nanyu does seem to be living in dire straits now. And all this is just because she is Nan 11's sister. There was an audible silence in the main hall. The emperor's expression darkened visibly, and the queen's face turned blue and white, with anger rising. Nan Xiang's face was livid and silent. The regent was the only one who was calm, not affected by these words at all, and even felt vaguely enjoying it. Domineering Ye Cheng glanced at the prince regent casually. Her red lips under the veil were slightly raised, and her beautiful eyes narrowed into crescent moons when she smiled. The princess regent's temperament is really in line with this princess's taste. I think if I'm going to be the princess's sister, so the end shouldn't be too bad. Nan 11 raised her eyebrows. Why do you see that? Because like the princess, I am selfish, narrow-minded, extremely possessive, and my mind is smaller than the head of a needle. I also don't like to share the same husband with others. 9 sisters, the Prince of Shu's face was gloomy, obviously suppressing his anger. What are you talking about? The marriage is related to the peace of the two countries and the stability of the world. How can you be allowed to talk nonsense and act willfully? Your Highness the Crown Prince is right, an envoy from the Shu Kingdom said seriously. The princess has the important responsibility of being a peacemaker and must take the maintenance of peace between the two countries as her own responsibility. How can she act so arbitrarily? Your Highness the princess is too willful. Ye Cheng seemed not to have heard Ye Yan and the envoy's crusade. He raised his eyebrows slightly and said in a coquettish voice, "If this princess doesn't covet the regent at all, can the princess allow me to stay in the regent's palace for a few days?" Jumei, Ye Yan stood up and stared at Ye Cheng coldly. "What on earth do you want to do?" "Prince, please be patient," Rong Chuiyun said calmly. "Your Majesty, the prince does not need to worry too much about your child's character." Ye Yan looked at Ye Cheng coldly, his expression as cold as ice, and his eyes were full of gloomy warning. However, Ye Cheng didn't even look at him from beginning to end. His eyes fell directly on Nan 11's face. with a somewhat lazy look in his eyes. Nan 11 was silent for a moment, her eyebrows showing deep thought. Don't you covet the regent? How many days will you stay at the Prince Regent's palace? For some reason, she had never had any hostility towards this woman whom she had only met once, and even felt a sense of mutual appreciation. Perhaps the fate between people is so wonderful, regardless of gender. And from this scene, Yan's anger did not seem to be fake. Could it be that Yeching Cheng did not come to the Great Zhou for marriage on her own accord, so she lost face at the palace banquet in front of the monarchs and ministers of the two countries and the Prince of Shu? With such a guess in mind, Nan 11 smiled and said, "Of course. As long as you don't have any ideas about my prince, you can stay as long as you want. If what you said is not true, the regent's mansion is a den of dragons and tigers for you. It's easy to get in, but it's hard to get out." The speaker is unintentional, but the listener is intentional. The emperor and the queen's faces changed slightly, and they immediately thought of Gu Qingshu, who entered the regent's mansion 3 days ago. Until now, his life and death are unknown, and his whereabouts cannot be found. There is not even a trace, as if this person has evaporated from the world. Don't worry, Princess Yeching Cheng raised her hand and gently lifted her hair. She was full of charm and amorous feelings. I don't have any other advantages, but I stick to my principles, keep my word, and don't do anything that hurts others or benefits myself. Author's words. Products produced by Nanhuang must be high quality. Moi. Window. Taboola equals window. Taboola. Taboola.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, Taboola below article feed, placement, below article feed, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 164. Although the emperor and the queen looked extremely ugly, and the Prince of Shu looked equally cold, Yeching Cheng obviously didn't care. I don't know if it's because she's always been willful, or if there's some other reason, she doesn't seem to care about the result of the marriage between the two countries at all, and it seems that the life and death of Shu has nothing to do with her. Of course, the truce between the two countries has only been over a year, and at this time they are both holding the idea of living in peace, so naturally they won't turn against each other because of the princess's willfulness, and won't let Shu fall into danger. But as a princess of a country, her words and deeds are really not in line with the rules, so that the Prince of Shu feels that he has lost face in front of the Emperor of the Great Zhou, and the Emperor and Queen of the Great Zhou are deeply provoked by the princess. Before the palace banquet was over, Yeching Cheng took the initiative to invite Nan 11, "The palace banquet is boring, I'm almost suffocating sitting here, can the princess go out with me?" Nan 11 turned to look at Rong Yu, and Rong Yu nodded. So Nan 11 smiled at Yeching Cheng, "Let's go." Yeching Cheng Yan's face was as cold as ice. "You. Brother, please be patient." Yeching Cheng stood up from her seat and smiled casually. The diplomatic relations between two countries are based on the word diplomatic. My sister is on good terms with the regent princess of the Great Zhou dynasty. Isn't it indirectly coaxing the regent king? Once the regent king is happy, he will naturally not send troops to Shu Kingdom in the future. My sister is also thinking about Shu Kingdom. After that, regardless of Yan's expression, she left her seat, bowed to the emperor and empress, and turned to walk out. The Queen Mother has been talking about the regent princess these 2 days. Since the princess is bored, why not accompany the princess to the Queen Mother's palace for a walk and talk to the Queen Mother for a while, so that the Queen Mother won't miss her? The emperor's calm and majestic voice came from behind. After the palace banquet is over, it won't be too late for the emperor's uncle to pick up the emperor's aunt from the palace. Nan 11 raised her eyebrows slightly. In front of all the ministers, His Majesty accused her of not visiting the palace to pay respects to the Empress Dowager for several days after her marriage, being arrogant and disrespectful, and ordered her to pay respects to the Empress Dowager at this time. Don't worry, Your Majesty. Nan 11 nodded gently, smiled calmly, and said goodbye. I will take the princess to Xi'an Palace to pay respects to the Empress Dowager. As she turned around, she gave Rong Yu a soothing look, and turned around and walked out with Yeching Cheng. There was a pin-drop silence in the hall. After His Majesty said that, he lowered his head and drank, hiding all the emotions in his eyes. Yan's expression was always gloomy and ugly. He deeply felt that the majesty of the Prince of Shu was challenged, and he was extremely dissatisfied with Yeching Cheng in his heart, but at this time in front of the monarch and ministers of the Great Zhou, he really didn't want to lose his demeanor, so he had to hold back the anger in his heart and watched Yeching Cheng leave as if no one was around. Walking outside the hall, it seemed that even the air was much fresher. The palace banquet had not yet ended. The two were not in a hurry to leave the palace. Now they had to go to Xi'an Palace to pay respects to the Queen Mother, so they could only stay in the palace. When they walked outside the Daking Palace, a palace servant led the way with a lamp and lowered his head. Yin Yu and Yin Shuang still followed Nan 11 like shadows. The inner courtyards of the palace, pavilions, corridors, and towers were all luxurious and beautiful. This princess came all the way to the territory of Dezhou, not to be a concubine of your emperor, to pay respects to the Queen Mother. Ye Qingqing's voice was soft and pleasant, revealing a bit of careless laziness. If it wasn't for you, this princess would not be interested in paying respects to an old woman. Don't worry. Nan 11's tone was equally leisurely, you may not even see the Queen Mother. Ye Qingqing was such a smart girl. She was only slightly stunned after hearing this, but soon understood what she meant. The Queen Mother wouldn't be stupid enough to embarrass you, right? The Queen Mother is the most noble woman in the Great Zhou. It's not normal to embarrass a little girl you don't like. Nan 11 smiled lightly, but maybe this shouldn't be called embarrassment, but the person being embarrassed is asking for it. The Queen Mother is just teaching others what the rules are. Ye Qingqing sneered, stupid woman. Nan 11 raised an eyebrow, scold me. Scold the Queen Mother, Ye Qingqing said bluntly, not worried about being heard by the palace people. Even the monarchs and ministers of Shu know the status of the regent of the Great Zhou in the Great Zhou, but the Queen Mother and the Emperor of the Great Zhou don't realize it. What else can they be but idiots? Nan 11 smiled quietly. Yes, even the monarchs and ministers of the enemy country know Rong Yu's ability and his importance to the Great Zhou, but the Queen Mother and the Emperor only see the threat of the regent to them. Princess, you just said that you are not here to be the Emperor's concubine. Nan 11 smiled faintly, since it is a marriage alliance, you should naturally marry the Emperor as a concubine. I saw that His Majesty the Emperor seemed very satisfied with you and wanted you to enter the harem, but the Queen didn't seem to be willing to do so. Of course she is not willing to do so. Ye Qingqing smiled lightly with a hint of sarcasm. If this princess enters this harem, it will definitely cause chaos in the world and make her position as the queen unstable. After a pause, a mocking arc appeared at the corner of her mouth. As for the Emperor, he is just a pervert. He likes this princess, but it doesn't mean that this princess has to like him. She is a woman with a temper. Nan 11 smiled faintly. This princess will live in the regent's mansion for the next 2 days. After Ye Yan and the Shu envoy leave, this princess will probably leave Dezhou. Don't worry, I won't cause trouble for you and the regent. I'm not afraid that the princess will cause trouble for me. Nan 11 was just a little curious. What is the princess doing here? I came for a coward. Coward? Nan 11 was puzzled. Who? Ye Qingqing's eyes were cold. A coward who fled without fighting. When I catch him, I will cripple his limbs, tie him up with iron chains, and let him taste the torture. Nan 11. What a tough girl. Ye Qingqing tilted her head. Are you scared? No. Nan 11 smiled lightly. It's just that the Great Zhou has a strong military force. After the prince and envoys of Shu leave, the princess will be left alone in the Great Zhou. It should not be easy to leave. The Great Zhou imperial city can't trap this princess. Ye Qingqing said lightly, Don't worry, your regent will not embarrass this princess. This statement is a bit misleading. But Nan 11 didn't care, and chatted with her. Your Highness Princess has known wrong you for a long time. No. Don't know? Nan 11 tilted her head to look at her, and couldn't help but feel a little curious. Since the princess doesn't know the regent of the Great Joe, how can you be sure that he won't embarrass you? And the tone of the princess's tone when she mentioned the regent just now seemed to indicate that she knew him quite well. Author's words. I will update one chapter first, and the other chapter is still being written. It will be added around 1 o'clock. You can read it in the morning. Good night. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 165. I guessed you would ask me. Yeching Cheng smiled faintly. I really don't know the regent of Zhou dynasty, and I have never seen him before, but I have heard of him. Nan 11. As a princess from an enemy country, most of what she heard about was that the regent was invincible and his cavalry defeated the Shu army. Although Nan 11 is much smarter and calmer than in her previous life, she is still essentially a girl, and she is still a simple girl without too much scheming. Even if she had a painful experience of being betrayed in her previous life, she was fully prepared and she only survived in her previous life. To 18 years. She has never experienced many ups and downs, nor has she experienced any spectacular love. Under the protection of the regent Rong Yu, she has always lived a pure and calm life. But this beautiful princess seems to have experienced many unknown stories, which makes people unpredictable for a while. Even her seemingly simple words always feel like there is some hidden meaning. However, Nan 11 knows that you should not do to others what you do not want others to do to you. They have just met for the first time tonight. Even if they have a good impression of each other, they will most likely become compatible friends in the future, but after all, tonight is the first time they met. As for the secrets in other people's hearts, even if she is a little curious, she will not continue to break the casserole and ask to the end. Xi'an Palace is right in front of you. Walking outside the solemn red palace gate, Nan 11 asked the palace people to go in and report, and then stood quietly outside the door waiting. In the inner hall of Xi'an Palace, 2 concubines from the harem were talking to the Queen Mother. 2 palace maids knelt on the ground and beat the Queen Mother's legs with lowered eyebrows. The palace where the Queen Mother lived was originally luxurious, and there were many people serving in the palace. Under the flattery of the concubines' soft laughter, the atmosphere became more relaxed and lively, and it was a happy one. However, when the palace attendants came in to report that the Princess Regent had come to pay her respects to the Queen Mother, the atmosphere in Xi'an Palace suddenly dropped a few degrees. The 2 concubines slowly stopped laughing, and one of them frowned. The Princess Regent is really a big deal. She was supposed to come to greet the Queen Mother early the morning after the wedding, but she put on airs and refused to come. The Queen Mother did not summon her tonight, but she did. Are you rushing to pay your respects to the Queen Mother? She is indeed a woman from a business background and doesn't understand any rules. The Queen Mother's original good mood was completely ruined, and she smiled lukewarmly. Isn't it a big deal? The regent protects the family and the country, holds military power, and the regent princess naturally follows her in all directions. How can she care about the sorrow? Do you think this old woman with 1 foot on the coffin board is in your eyes? Hearing this, the 2 concubines quickly coaxed the Queen Mother, please calm down. The day after tomorrow is the Queen Mother's birthday. You should be happy these 2 days. Why meet an unruly businesswoman? It will ruin your mood. Yes, Queen Mother, I have carefully prepared a gift for the Queen Mother in the past 2 days. The Queen Mother will definitely like it. When the birthday was mentioned, the gloomy expression on the Queen Mother's face dissipated a bit, and she said calmly, you still have good intentions. The AI family has no hope of the regent princess. If she cannot cause trouble to the AI family will be thankful. After saying this, she continued chatting with the two concubines, as if she had completely forgotten that the regent princess was waiting outside. The two concubines also tried their best to say nice things, and after a while, the queen mother was coaxed into being very happy. Outside Xi'an Palace, Nan 11 stood quietly for a while. The palace attendant who had not seen the report for a long time came out and smiled faintly. "I was right, we won't see the queen mother tonight. The palace servants haven't come out yet, which proves that the queen mother just wants to embarrass you," Ye Cheng said. "She neither directly lets you in nor refuses to see you. Does this mean she wants you to wait outside for a while?" Nan 11 turned to look at her. "Your Highness, are you interested in waiting here?" "Not interested." Ye Cheng stretched out his hand to caress his face. His voice was lazy and charming. "This princess's beautiful face needs to be taken good care of. Blowing in the air and staying up late will make the skin dry. How much jade do I need to use to maintain it?" Nan 11 smiled lightly. "In that case, let's go." "What are you going for?" "Wander around the imperial garden and wait for the palace banquet to end." "Just what I want," Ye Cheng said. "Even if the wind wants to blow, I would rather do it in the fragrant and beautiful imperial garden, but I have no interest in standing here as a door god." So the two of them turned around and walked towards the imperial garden like a leisurely stroll. At night, the palace lanterns were lit, and the air was quiet and peaceful. Xi'an Palace is still full of joy and bustle. The queen mother did have some intention of giving power to the princess regent, so she didn't directly say no, and planned to leave Nan 11 alone. The anger in her heart has not gone away yet. Originally, on the day when the prince regent got married, she had already thought that when the princess regent came into the palace to invite Jing for tea the next day, she would teach Nan 11 the royal rules. For this reason, she even told the queen and the concubines that night, "I must come to Xi'an Palace early tomorrow morning to pay my respects, in order to achieve the purpose of setting rules for the regent princess." The queen and the concubines naturally did not dare to go against her will, and they happened to have some intention of treating Nan 11 well in their hearts. However, no one expected that Nan 11 did not even step into the palace gate the day after the wedding. "Greetings. Serve tea?" A woman who had just married into the royal family, not to mention setting rules, was so big that she didn't even show her face, which made the queen mother so angry that her face turned green. Several sets of fine tea utensils were broken, and even the exquisite long nails on her nails were broken. 2 of the condoms were broken. The queen and the concubines in the harem, by trying to appease the queen mother, added fuel to the fire and made the princess regent useless. The queen mother couldn't help but break an antique vase. The whole day in Xi'an Palace was filled with gloomy air, and the palace servants waited in fear, fearing that they would be dragged out and beaten to death if they angered the queen mother. It can be seen how much the queen mother hated Nan 11 in her heart, so Nan 11 took the initiative to ask for an audience tonight, thinking that Nan 11 finally knew to come over and show goodwill, so the queen mother deliberately had some thoughts of teaching her a lesson. Of course, she didn't know that it was the emperor who asked Nan 11 to come. But she didn't expect that Nan 11 and Ye Cheng would wait for a while and then go directly to the imperial garden. So much so that half an hour later, she said lightly to the palace servants, "Let the regent princess come in." After the palace servants went out and found that the regent princess had left and came in to report the truth, the queen mother's face immediately became gloomy, with visible blue and white interlaced, and even faintly visible distortion under anger. The 2 concubines obviously did not expect such a situation. After a moment of silence, concubine Xian spoke coldly, "The regent princess is really bold. She is so insincere when paying respects to the queen mother. What does she think of herself? Yes, queen mother, don't bother with her. She is just a merchant who doesn't know the rules. Get out," the queen mother said in a cold tone, "get out of here. Get out now. Get out. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula. Push, mode, Thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 166. The environment is quiet, with fragrance lingering in the air. Nan 11 and Yeching Cheng strolled leisurely through the imperial garden, with 4 palace attendants holding lanterns leading the way. The pavilions at night looked a little more quiet and soft. Just now at the palace banquet, the princess asked the prince not to come down in front of so many people. Will the prince make things difficult for you? Yeching Cheng raised his hand and gently licked his hair on his temples, saying in a loose and lazy voice, him. Nan 11 turned her head in shock. Why are you looking at me like that? Yeching Cheng curled his lips and smiled. Are you scared by me? Scared? Not really. Just a little surprised. Nan 11 said, the princess' true temperament is different from her appearance. This princess used to be a gentle little girl, but fate took a turn on her, so she had to learn to be tougher. Yeching Cheng whispered, people are bullied when they are good, and they are ridiculed when they are good. If you want to change your destiny, first you have to learn to resist fate. Nan 11 was silent for a moment, but many times, not everyone can do whatever they want. Without desire, there is no weakness. Without fear, you can pursue what you want. Yeching Cheng said, people who have no desires or demands are the most difficult to deal with. Such people may not even care about their own lives, so naturally there is nothing weaknesses. If a person is fearless, he can work hard to pursue what he wants, no matter how hard he is, or whether he will suffer a lot of damage. In this way, he can at least do whatever he wants within the scope of his ability. Nan 11's heart was moved. There were probably very few women in the world who could say such a thing. It had nothing to do with inferiority, but was caused by the long-standing rules and ethics. Even a princess could not break away from the shackles of secular rules. Actually, I envy you. Yeching Cheng suddenly said, you have a husband who loves you deeply, and he is so strong. Under his meticulous protection, you are the woman who can really do whatever you want. Nan 11 was silent for a moment, then nodded, sometimes I also feel that I am very lucky. I am so lucky that I can't help but wonder what virtues and abilities I have to be able to attract the attention of a man like Rong Yu. Juxiao Pavilion is as rich as the country, and its power is extraordinary. As the daughter of Juxiao Pavilion, your status is very suitable for the regent of the great Zhou dynasty. Yeching Cheng smiled faintly, the regent has the power to have troops, Juxiao Pavilion is rich and powerful, and you two are a perfect match. Nan 11 raised her eyebrows, since you know him so well, you should know my identity. Know that your identity is fake, Yeching Cheng answered casually, it shows that in the regent's heart, your weight is far more important than that of Juxiao Pavilion. Otherwise, how could anyone want to have the status of the daughter of Juxiao Pavilion? Nan 11 said nothing. There is no reason to like someone, Yeching Cheng said, no matter if he is good or not, no matter what he becomes, there is only him and it is irreplaceable. Nan 11 pondered for a moment, the princess is talking about the person in your heart. After walking to a pavilion not far away and sitting down, Yeching Cheng's brows showed a bit of coldness, Prince Yan is not the same mother as me. Nan 11 nodded, I can tell. The Prince of Shu's attitude towards Yeching Cheng was that she was just a married princess. There was no so-called brother-sister relationship, and he didn't even have any respect. Of course, Her Royal Highness the Princess's attitude was far from respectful. In a sense, the royal family of the Kingdom of Shu is still my enemy. Yeching Cheng chuckled. Under the dim light, his smile had a bit of an enchanting chill. So they sent me to Dezhou for marriage. The worst decision ever. Enemy. Nan 11 looked at this woman thoughtfully. Under her charming appearance, there seemed to be some unknown emotions hidden deep inside her. She was depressed, deep, and paranoid, but all these emotions were perfected by Yun Danfunking's smile. Cover it up so no one can see it. Nan 11 suddenly remembered a saying, who doesn't have a little secret in his heart for the rest of his life. In the royal family, many people do not even have the most basic freedoms throughout their lives. Their destiny is completely in the hands of those in power. While they enjoy glory and wealth, they do not even have the right to choose their own marriage. The inescapable fate is actually a kind of sadness. The two of them stayed in the imperial garden for about a cup of tea, chatting without a word, not asking about each other's secrets, and giving each other complete respect. Until the regent came in person, Nan 11 stood up and asked, "Is it over so soon?" Rong Yu shook his head, "No, let's go back first." As expected of the regent, the emperor and the queen have not yet left, but the regent can leave first. Ye Cheng said lightly, "The rules in the world are everywhere, but they are all customized by the strong. As long as you are strong enough, even if the 9-5 Supreme Lord must also bow his head." Rong Yu glanced at her, "Are you staying in the palace tonight, or are you going to the regent's palace with 11 It's really interesting what the regent said." Ye Cheng smiled lightly, with all kinds of charm flowing from the corners of his eyebrows, "Follow 11 to the regent's palace. The regent's palace doesn't belong to you, why don't you go with the prince?" Rong Yu's expression was indifferent and distant, and he ignored her teasing. Nan 11 smiled and said, "My husband doesn't like to get involved with women, so if the princess wants to live in the regent's mansion, she can only do so in my name." Ye Cheng sneered, "If I hadn't asked for it from the prince, do you really think that this princess would rarely come to stay at the regent's mansion?" "You don't have to go." Rong Yu's voice was indifferent, and he didn't intend to give her face. At this time, the Prince of Shu and the Emperor should be discussing what kind of status to give you. If you are interested, you may go and listen. It's not a bad idea to stay in the Queen's Fenji Palace tonight." As he said, he put his arm around Nan 11's shoulders. "Let's go back first." Ye Cheng frowned slightly and hurriedly followed. "As a dignified regent, you don't need to be so narrow-minded, right? Staying in the Queen's Fenji Palace? I'm afraid that if I get up tomorrow morning and release Fenji Palace, there will be one more body. When the two countries go to war, I don't know whose fault it is." Rong Yu didn't say anything. Does this princess need to coax the regent princess well, so as not to be kicked out by accident in the future? Ye Cheng stretched out her hand and hooked Nan 11's arm. "I will sleep with you tonight." Nan 11 was surprised. "What? This princess has just arrived and is unfamiliar with the place." "I will definitely recognize the bed." Ye Cheng sighed faintly. "What if a scoundrel climbs through the window and sneaks into this princess's boudoir at night? So you sleep with me tonight?" Rong Yu paused slightly, stretched out his hand to pull her hand away, and ordered coldly, "Yin Huang, you are responsible for entertaining the Princess of Shu tonight. Her residence is as far away from Zhaochen Palace as possible. Before the morning hour tomorrow, she is not allowed to disturb the princess." After that, he left with Nan 11. Author has something to say. There will be another update during the day. Good night. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 167. Ye Cheng stared at the two people in front of him with dissatisfaction as they walked away, then turned to look at Yin Yu and Yin Chuang. One of them had a polite smile, the other was as cold as ice. Ye Cheng was silent for a moment, already feeling confident, but still asked, "Who is Yin Huang?" Yin Yu stretched out her hand and pointed at Yin Huang, her. Yin Chuang's face was expressionless, looking like a cold and taciturn ice cube. Ye Cheng rolled his eyes at the sky. "Okay, go back and wash up and sleep." There is probably no one to chat with this princess tonight. After walking outside the palace gate and getting on the carriage, Nan 11 frowned slightly. Wrong you, the princess is a guest from afar. We must do our best to be landlords. Wrong you looked down at her. Didn't I ask Yin Shuang to entertain her well? It's okay that he didn't say this. When he said it, Nan 11 couldn't help but want to laugh, and at the same time she was a little speechless. You did it on purpose, right? Yin Shuang's cold temperament let her entertain the princess, and put a basin of ice cubes. What difference does it make to be around a princess? Wrong you didn't say anything, but held her in his arms, lowered his head and kissed her face. Ignore her. Nan 11 raised her eyebrows. How can you bear with such a stunning beauty? Wrong you said, she is not as good looking as you. Nan 11 was speechless for a moment, then asked, how much do you know about the Princess of Shu? Wrong you said, are you interested in her? Somewhat curious. Wrong you pursed her lips, are you so curious? Nan 11 raised her head and glanced at him. Princess Jing Cheng is a woman, you won't even be jealous of her, right? Wrong you said nothing, his expression tightened, and he seemed unhappy. Nan 11 blinked. Was he losing his temper? It's really strange. Are you really jealous? Nan 11 raised her eyebrows and raised her hand to rub his face. I'm not worried about her having anything to do with you yet. The prince does know how to strike first. Wrong you said calmly, are you jealous too? Of course Nan 11k I will stay here and not leave. When the time comes, there will be an inexplicable mistress in the palace, and I will lose more than I gain. No, wrong you said, besides you, there will be no other mistress in the regent's palace. This is not necessarily true. When men first fall in love, they always talk sweetly and promise each other. Once they change their hearts later, they say that the relationship has faded and they can no longer find the original feeling. Nan 11 said in a calm tone as if she had experienced a lot of things. This charming princess is not only beautiful in appearance, but also has a good temperament. Few men can resist her charm. Wrong you looked at her silently without saying a word. What's wrong? I will not change my mind, he said. If you don't believe it, you can drug me. Nan 11's expression changed slightly. What medicine was given? Wrong you said, if I betray you in the future, let me bleed from all my orifices. Don't talk nonsense. Nan 11 frowned and hurriedly covered his mouth. We still want to grow old together, you can't even think of leaving me alone. Wrong you saw the uneasiness in her eyes and couldn't help but blame himself. He stretched out his hand to hold her hand and kissed her palm. His voice was warm and soft. Unconsciously, Yeching Cheng is good at soul possession. I thought that this kind of ability is only for people, it works for men, but I didn't expect that you would be the first one to be seduced. Nan 11 was silent for a moment, speechless. Actually. She frowned, I just think she has a special personality. She dares to love and hate, and she does whatever she wants. People can't help but feel good about her. Wrong you said, in the eyes of many people, her behavior will be regarded as deviant, and most people in the world cannot tolerate the existence of such a willful and unruly woman. The world's requirements for women are always extremely strict, because if women were like her, men's dignity and status would be greatly threatened. Nan 11 said, however, I admire her. You can do whatever you want without fear of worldly judgment, without fear of criticism from the world, without being bound by rules. Admire her? Wrong you stared deeply into her eyebrows and said, no need to admire her, you are much better than her. How could she once be comparable to Yeching Cheng? Nan 11 just smiled faintly when she heard this, taking this sentence as a compliment that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. After all, in the eyes of the person she likes, the other person is full of advantages. Returning to the palace, Wrong Yu directly took Nan 11 out of the carriage, turned around and walked into the gate of the palace, all the way to Zhaochen Hall. Midway through, Nan 11 felt embarrassed and asked him to put her down, but Rong Yu turned a deaf ear and did not give her a chance to meet the princess. So when Ye Cheng arrived at the regent's palace, the only person who spoke to her was Yin Shuang, and she often said after 3 or 5 sentences, Yin Huang replied calmly, and Ye Cheng directly suspected that the regent must have done it on purpose. The moon is bright, the stars are few, and the breeze is blowing. The moonlight is good tonight, suitable for pleasure. Rong Yu and Nan 11 returned to the dormitory to bathe and change clothes. After a heated exchange, they lay quietly on the bed and enjoyed the charming and quiet atmosphere. Nan 11 hooked Rong Yu's hair. We talked about something in the royal garden just now. Ye Cheng said that she came to Dazhu to find a coward. Although her tone was full of resentment, I guess she wanted to find this coward. The person may be her sweetheart. Hearing this, Rong Yu looked at her silently. What? Nan 11 was puzzled. Did I say something wrong? No, Rong Yu said. Did she say anything else? Nan 11 thought for a while. She said that the royal family of Shu is her enemy in a sense. Rong Yu said nothing. Does the prince know her story? I didn't know it at first, Rong Yu said. Later I learned a little bit more about it. When did you mean later? After I learned that she was sent to Dazhu for marriage, I heard what Yunting said. Master Yun, Nan 11 raised an eyebrow. Does he have extensive information? As soon as she asked this question, she realized that what she was asking was nonsense. The master of Juxiao Pavilion's right-hand man naturally had extensive information. Good. Where is Mr. Yun from? Rong Yu was silent. Sichuan. Nan 11 was surprised. Coincidence. Maybe it's not a coincidence. Rong Yu frowned, and his eyebrows were a little more thoughtful. When I rescued Yunting at the border, he was seriously injured. He was already on the verge of death. Most of the injuries on his body were from torture. 2. Nan 11 was surprised. Did you ask about his origins? He was seriously injured and was in a coma for more than half a month. During his coma, some subordinates had already roughly investigated his life story. Rong Yu said. However, some things seem to have been deliberately erased because of time constraints. Only superficial things were found. After he woke up, he begged me not to investigate further and was willing to work for me from now on. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 168. Nan 11 was silent for a moment after hearing this. After a moment, she guessed. Princess Jingcheng said that the royal family of Shu Kingdom is her enemy. Could it be because of Yunting? Rong Yu, do you think they have any connection? Rong Yu didn't speak. His eyes fell on her slender neck. Rong Yu. Nan 11 raised her eyes. Why don't you speak? Rong Yu's eyes were dark. I'm not interested in their affairs. Then what are you interested in? Only interested in you. After saying that, he lowered his head and bit her white neck. It's a good night, don't talk about insignificant people. Nan 11 wanted to say that they were not insignificant people, and this was the best time to gossip, but Rong Yu didn't give her this opportunity, and soon kissed her into a state of confusion. Rong Yu. Be good, call me husband. Nan 11 was confused. Husband. Yes, I'm here. The temperature in the inner hall rose steadily, and the atmosphere soon turned charming again. Outside the window, a bright moon shone through the carved window, and the silver light fell on the layers of curtains, like waves. On the same night, the atmosphere in Xi'an Palace was low and depressing, making people uneasy. The regent princess didn't even step into the palace gate and left directly. Rong Chuiyun frowned. How arrogant is the regent princess? My temple is small and can't accommodate a Buddha like her, the queen mother said coldly with a gloomy face. Before she married the regent, she turned a deaf ear to my imperial decree. Now that she has married into the royal family with a legitimate reason, she is even more arrogant with Rong Yu's power. Although Rong Chuiyun didn't see it with her own eyes, she understood the cause and effect after hearing what the queen mother said just now. Nan 11 did come, but the Queen Mother deliberately made things difficult for her and asked her to wait outside the palace for a while. This has always been a common way to show power in the palace. If the Queen Mother or the Empress wants to teach a certain concubine in the harem a lesson, or if a concubine is dissatisfied with someone of lower status than herself, this method can achieve the purpose of teaching people a lesson without even a reason. But I didn't expect that the regent princess would not buy it at all. However, the Queen Mother was right. Nan 11 was just relying on the power of the regent to look down on others. Otherwise, which daughter of a powerful family in the imperial capital would dare to be so unruly in front of the Queen Mother? The regent has held the power of the regent for too long. Rong Chuyun's expression was cold. I have been on the throne for more than a year. It doesn't make sense that I can't even make decisions for my own country. The Queen Mother lay on the carved brocade couch, and the two palace maids beside her lowered their heads and tapped her legs lightly. I have thought about this for a long time. What feasible solutions does the emperor have? A feasible solution? Rong Chuyun's brows were deep and his tone was solemn. I got the throne from my father legitimately, and the royal family has the responsibility to maintain the orthodoxy. The Queen Mother frowned. Those princes only know how to eat, drink and enjoy themselves all day long. No one wants to offend the regent easily. Expect them to take the lead? Is it possible? Rong Chuyun said, the uncles can still do something, but the regent is too powerful and it is difficult to shake it for a while. Even if the uncles are willing to take the lead, it will take time. But he really can't wait that long, not even a day. As an emperor, he can't do things as he wants, he is controlled by others everywhere, and he has to look at the regent's face everywhere. He is tired of this cowardly feeling. The Queen Mother thought for a moment and said solemnly, didn't the Prince of Shu bring their princess to propose marriage? Yes. Rong Chuyun nodded, the Prince of Shu wants their princess to be my concubine to promote peace and friendship between the two countries, but I think the Princess of Shu seems to have a big prejudice against marriage. The Queen Mother said, in that case, why not use this Princess of Shu as a chess piece? Rong Chuyun was stunned. What does mother mean? The Queen Mother said calmly and ruthlessly, if the Princess of Shu Kingdom accidentally died in the Great Zhou, what would be the consequences? Rong Chuyun said, it will lead to a war between the two countries. The Queen Mother said coldly, once the two countries go to war, there will be a legitimate excuse to transfer the regent away from the imperial capital. At that time, the emperor will have enough time to win the hearts of his subjects and firmly grasp the power of the government. As long as the regent leaves the imperial capital, the emperor can use his fists to gather power. When the regent returns from the border, everything will be settled. At that time, in front of the civil and military ministers, he will reward military merits and take back the military power. With both kindness and power, I don't believe he really dares to disobey the order. The emperor has control of the court power and takes back the military power. Then, no matter how powerful Rong Yu is, can he turn the world upside down with his bare hands? What the Queen Mother said makes sense. Rong Chuyun lowered his eyes were deep and cold. The master of this great Zhou dynasty is the son, not the regent. The one that all civil and military officials should submit to is the son, not the regent. So the regent Rong Yu should not exist. Rong Chuyun stood up and said goodbye. Queen Mother, please rest early. I will go to the imperial study to deal with some memorials first. The Queen Mother nodded, don't be too tired. I know. Rong Chuyun left Xi'an Palace and sat in the imperial sedan chair to return to the imperial study. The imperial study was as quiet as snow, and Rong Chuyun's voice became colder and colder. Have you checked Madame Nan's identity? Is she really from Juxiao Pavilion? The black-clothed shadow guard lowered his head. The owner of Juxiao Pavilion is a man, and I have never heard of him having a daughter, but this pavilion owner has always lived in seclusion and has been elusive. Whether he really has a daughter unknown to the world, I am not sure for the time being. Your Majesty, the Prince of Shu wants to see you. Rong Chiuyun frowned and waved his hand silently. The black-clad shadow guards quietly retreated. Let the prince in. Yes. Yan, dressed in black, stepped into the imperial study. After a simple greeting, he said indifferently, there is something that I have been holding in my mind for a whole day. No matter how I think about it, it seems strange, so I came to see the emperor in the middle of the night. I hope the emperor will forgive me for disturbing you. Rong Chiuyun walked to the imperial desk and sat down. The palace servants served tea. Prince, if you have anything to say, just speak up, Rong Chiuyun said, glancing out the window nonchalantly. It's still early now, so there's no need to bother you in the middle of the night. Yan sat down in a chair, holding a cup of tea, and said with a frown, someone said at the palace banquet today that the regent princess is the daughter of Juxiao Pavilion. I couldn't ask in detail in front of everyone in the daytime, but the more I think about it, the more strange it seems. As far as I know, the mother of the master of Juxiao Pavilion has long passed away, and he has not yet married, and has no wife or daughter around him, so the identity of this daughter of Juxiao Pavilion is probably a little strange. Rong Chiuyun's heart was moved. Just after the shadow guard reported the matter of Juxiao Pavilion tonight, Yan delivered the news he needed. He was silent for a moment. Prince, do you think the identity of this daughter of Juxiao Pavilion is fake? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 169. Whether it's fake or not, I'm not sure yet. Yan didn't say it too fully, but I'm at least 8/9% sure. After a pause, he smiled and said, I know that the emperor is dissatisfied with the regent. Before I came to Dazhu this time, my father also told me that His Majesty the Emperor of Dazhu is a young and promising emperor who is working hard to govern and should not be controlled by others. Besides, the emperor has already, after passing the age of weak crown, and having been on the throne for more than a year, due to emotions and reasons, the power of the government should be in the hands of His Majesty the Emperor. After all, there can only be one voice in the country. The father said that as long as the two countries get married, from now on, we are a family, and whenever His Majesty the Emperor needs anything, Shu will be there. Rong Chiuyun narrowed his eyes and took a sip of tea. His eyebrows deepened slightly. I have accepted your country's wishes first. If you need it in the future, I will definitely speak up. The corners of Yan's mouth raised in a subtle arc. There is one more thing. I hope His Majesty the Emperor can help me. What? Qing Cheng is a willful girl. She was spoiled by her father in the Shu kingdom and is a bit arrogant, Yan said. Isn't it the Queen Mother's birthday the day after tomorrow? I asked the Queen Mother to give her a marriage at the birthday banquet. I was not greedy and gave her a title. Just a concubine. What does your Majesty wish? Rong Chiuyun was silent, but his heart moved when he thought of the peerless beauty of the Qing Cheng princess. Only. The prince's sister doesn't seem to be a woman who obeys discipline. Yan smiled lightly. My father used to spoil her, but now that we have arrived in the Great Zhou dynasty, we will naturally abide by the etiquette and rules of the Great Zhou dynasty. If she is disobedient, it is the emperor's right to punish her in any way, as long as she is kept just to maintain peace between the two countries. Rong Chiuyun was good at guessing people's hearts when he was a prince, and he was also good at speaking skills. When he heard the prince's words, he naturally understood what he meant. He didn't know whether Qing Cheng was favored when he was in Shu, but the prince obviously didn't have much love for his sister. Whether it was because of his cold nature, or because Qing Cheng didn't give him face at the palace banquet during the day, causing him to lose face and hold a grudge, in short, it was true that the brother and sister had a bad relationship. Ye Qingqing's role for Ye Yan was probably to temporarily maintain peace between the two countries and buy more time for Shu to recuperate and strengthen its troops. Rong Chuiyun knew it in his heart, but he didn't express it with his mouth, and they understood each other tacitly. On April 24, Ling Fan returned from Dongling and went directly to the regent's palace to report the details. The subjects of Dongling welcomed the eldest princess warmly. Ling Fan always spoke concisely and to the point. On the surface, the royal family, princes, and clan members were all friendly and expressed their excitement and joy for the eldest princess returning to the palace. Seemingly friendly? Nan 11's expression was subtle, and she looked at the expressionless Ling Fan silently, secretly thinking that it was really interesting to hear the sentence coming from his mouth. Emperor Dongling asked the eldest princess about Miss Nan. The eldest princess said that Miss Nan can't leave for the time being. Rong Yu originally just listened to him silently, but when he heard this, he frowned slightly. I and 11er are already married. Ling Fan was silent for a moment, then lowered his eyes and changed his words. The eldest princess said that the princess cannot leave for the time being. Nan 11's mouth twitched slightly and she was silent. Rong Yu turned to look at Nan 11 and said warmly, "Is there anything you want to ask?" Nan 11 said, "My mother should not be in any danger." Most of the Dongling royal family have an attitude of trying to please the eldest princess and don't dare to offend her. Ling Fan shook his head. The eldest princess also seems to have the ability to protect herself. What Ling Fan didn't say was that Mrs. Nan's noble and domineering attitude after returning to Dongling made everyone in the Dongling royal family dare not even breathe. They were all submissive, just like a group of little wives who dare not complain after being angry. Although Nan 11 didn't understand it very well, she was relieved. General Ling has traveled a long distance and had a hard time. Go back and rest early. The end will not be hard. Go back and rest if the princess asks you to. Rong Yu said calmly, no need to show off. Ling Fan was silent for a moment. Yes. I will retire at the end. After saying that, he turned around and left. As soon as he walked out of Zhaochen Hall, a beautiful and gentle woman in blue clothes met across the street. Ling Fan was slightly startled, and then walked past her without looking away. Ye Qingcheng paused slightly, turned to look at the man turning away, and smiled casually. The regent's men are indeed determined men. When they see such a charming beauty like this princess, they don't even raise their eyes. Tisk, I really don't understand the style. Princess Qingcheng, Nan 11 stood on the stone steps with a smile on her lips. Did you sleep well last night? It's not good. Ye Qingcheng looked away, frowned slightly, and climbed up the steps. When you first arrive in a strange place, you have to accept the bed, and there is no one to accompany you at night. The feeling of loneliness and coldness is really unbearable. Nan 11 was silent for a moment, then raised her eyebrows. Who does the princess want to accompany you? You. You're not that shameless. Rong Yu stood at the door of the palace with his hands folded, watching Nan 11 lead Ye Qingcheng into the Zhaochen palace with a cold expression on his face. If you don't feel comfortable staying in the regent's palace, you can go live in the palace. Ye Qingcheng sneered, the regent's hospitality is really chilling. Rong Yu was cold and distant, obviously not welcoming her. Why don't I, the princess, tell the emperor directly that I want to marry the regent, and that from now on I will be sisters with the princess and serve the same husband, so that the regent can be gentler to me? Ye Qingcheng's red lips curled up slightly, the corners of her eyebrows and eyes were full of seductive charm, and her voice was also lazy. What do you think of this decision, princess? Rong Yu's eyes instantly became cold and stern. Nothing. Nan 11 smiled lightly, her voice was particularly gentle. Princess, be smart. We can be sisters or good friends. If you dare to hit on my husband, we can only be enemies. Usually, my enemies will not end well. The words fell slowly, and it sounded like a spring breeze, but it concealed a domineering and threatening meaning that could not be ignored. Ye Qingcheng saw with her own eyes that the coldness on the regent's noble and indifferent face faded. His eyes became gentle in an instant, and the corners of his mouth even raised a subtle smile. She wanted to roll her eyes. I'll go to the military camp first. Wrong. You looked at Nan 11, let her accompany you. If you're bored, go out for a walk. Your Highness, what you said is not right. Ye Ching Cheng frowned, this princess is a guest. It should be the princess who accompanies this princess. How come this princess accompanies the princess? An uninvited guest, and you want this prince to treat you like a guest of honor. Wrong. Yu's voice was indifferent, it's your honor to accompany the princess. If you feel dissatisfied, go back to your Shu kingdom. Wrong. Yu. Nan 11 spoke, and kissed his face comfortingly. Men have broad minds, and they can't be as fussy as women. Warm Ti. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 170. Wrong. Yu was silent for a moment, looking at her gentle eyebrows, and said warmly, I will come back for lunch at noon. What a good husband with 24 filial piety. Ye Ching Cheng turned to look at the sky, and couldn't help thinking that if the soldiers at the border of Shu knew that the regent of Great Zhou had been immersed in Wenwen Township and dared to be so disgusted in front of outsiders, I'm afraid they would be impatient to raise troops to attack. Shame. Nan 11 pondered for a moment. You haven't been to the military camp much during this time. Don't let the soldiers think that you, the prince, have stopped doing your job after marrying a wife. Ling Fan just came back from Dongling. Let him rest at home for 2 days. Things in the military camp you should worry more. The implication was very clear, she wanted to entertain this beautiful princess well today. Although she has no friendship with Ye Ching Cheng, she still lives in the palace anyway, so she can't be indifferent to others, otherwise it would be too rude, right? She and Rong Yu had just gotten married, and their relationship was very close to each other. If there were no outsiders present, they would naturally be as intimate as they wanted. And she and Ye Ching Cheng were both from the daughter's family, so it was easy for them to talk and the atmosphere was relaxed. In short, it's easy to get along with each other, but if the three of them stay together, the situation will obviously be very awkward. She thought very carefully, taking into account the needs of her guests and Rong Yu's image in front of the soldiers, but she forgot that her husband was a jealous man. Rong Yu frowned slightly and said with obvious dissatisfaction in his tone, coming back to eat will not delay things in the military camp. Well. Nan 11 was silent for a moment, looking at the dissatisfaction faintly showing on his noble face. She couldn't help but laugh, and whispered something in his ear, soft and sultry. Rong Yu's heart trembled slightly, and there was obvious throbbing in his eyes. Then, like a lion whose fur had been smoothed, his voice became a little deeper, then I'll be back early in the evening. The dissatisfaction in his tone had faded away, leaving only tenderness. Nan 11 hummed, I'll wait for you at the palace. Rong Yu kissed her forehead, turned around and walked out of the Zhao Chen palace. Throughout the whole process, he regarded Ye Ching Cheng, a beauty known as the most beautiful woman in the world, as nothing and ignored her completely. I was planning to resign on my own initiative, Ye Ching Cheng said in a subtle tone, your prince is really a treasure. If this was an emperor, he would definitely be a fatuous king who will never come to court early from now on. I think so too. Nan 11 smiled faintly, pretending not to hear her teasing. You said how blind a person must be to let go of such a top-quality treasure and choose a worthless and ungrateful one. Where are the fake pearls? Ye Ching Cheng was silent for a moment and asked in confusion, who are you talking about? Talk about herself. Nan 11 shook her head, it's just something I feel. Then he turned to look at Ye Ching Cheng, do you want to go out for a walk? Yes. Ye Ching Cheng raised his hand to brush his hair, his voice was lazy, I heard that there is a silver shop with good jewelry, and I would like to add some jewelry. Nan 11 nodded and asked Yao to bring more banknotes. You don't need to bring the banknote. Ye Ching Cheng shook his head, there's no need to bring it. Buying jewelry without bringing a banknote? Nan 11 smiled lightly, Her features and eyes were unparalleled. Princess, do you want to say that you will not be rewarded for your merits? No reward for no merit. Ye Cheng curled her lips and smiled. No, this princess likes to receive no reward for no merit. Nan 11 was surprised. Then, let's go to Moyo Pavilion. Ye Cheng said. Does the princess know where Moyo Pavilion is? I know. Nan 11 nodded. The most famous jewelry store in the imperial city. What else? Besides? Nan 11 was puzzled. The most famous jewelry store naturally has the most exquisite styles, the most expensive prices, and the best quality. Is there anything different? Do you know who the owner of Moyo Pavilion is? Nan 11 really didn't know this, so she shook her head. Let's go. Ye Cheng turned around and walked out first. Nan 11's heart moved slightly. She really didn't know who the master of Moyo Pavilion was. Could it be someone she knew? The two of them left the palace, got on the carriage, and walked towards the long street where Moyo Pavilion was located. The streets are still busy and noisy. After getting off the carriage, the two walked into Moyo Pavilion. There were several ladies in the building choosing jewelry. The shopkeeper was still the same shopkeeper where Nan 11 bought bracelets last time. Previously, she was the legitimate daughter of the Nan family. Although her father was the prime minister, because her mother was from a merchant family, the ladies of the imperial capital looked down upon her and thought she was a vulgar merchant girl. In fact, Nan 11 knew in her heart that those who belittled her did not really look down on her. Some people were jealous and envious that she was favored by the regent, so they tried their best to belittle her background and thought that she was favored by the regent. She was not worthy of the regent. After all, before she was forcibly brought into the palace by the regent, outsiders did not actually have that much ill will towards her, let alone that obvious. And now she has married the regent and is a legitimate regent. Whether it is people who were jealous, envious of her, or people who really hate her, most of them dare not offend and provoke her anymore. So when they saw her entering Moyo Pavilion, several ladies dressed in luxurious and exquisite clothes turned around and bowed their heads to say hello. I have met the Princess Regent. When we meet on such an occasion, we don't have to follow the palace rules to be courteous, but we still have to follow the proper etiquette, and no one dares to neglect it easily. Nan 11 said calmly, Madams, there is no need to be polite. You respect me a foot, I respect you a foot. Nan 11 has never been a person who is arrogant because of her status. Her strength and rudeness are only directed at those who take the initiative to provoke and make things difficult for her. Does the princess want to choose a few pieces of jewelry? The shopkeeper came forward and asked respectfully. The building has just received a few new models recently. Would the princess like to take a look? Nan 11 smiled faintly and raised her hand to signal Ye Cheng. Today I am accompanying this Miss Ye to choose. You just need to entertain her. The shopkeeper nodded and turned to look at Ye Cheng. Does Miss Ye have any special needs? Ye Cheng said casually, bring me the most expensive and beautiful ones here, necklaces, forehead pendants, earrings, bracelets, hairpins, I want them all. She said she wanted everything, but to the shopkeeper, she just wanted to see everything, and whether to buy or not was another matter. After all, the jewelry in Moyo Pavilion is well known to be expensive, and even the ladies of aristocratic families have to pay for it. Buying a few pieces at a time, this kind of big deal is usually only possible for merchants like Nan 11's mother, or the palace eunuchs who make reservations for the concubines in the harem. Miss, do you like gold or jade jewelry? The shopkeeper asked. What style do you like? Gold and jade jewelry are both available, Ye Cheng said, all the new models this year, all displayed. The shopkeeper smiled faintly. Please wait for a moment, Miss Ye. Author's words. Guess what Ye Cheng wants to do? If you guess correctly, you will get a prize. Good night. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, Thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix.